Good morning. So happy that it is Friday, everybody. I hope your week went well. Thank you for taking time to be here with me today on January 26th. I am Kathy. Welcome to Yarn with Heart. Today in this yarn chat, I will be sharing about a completed item for my Tropical Bird of the Month make-along. The make-along is a 2-for because it is also the prayer shawl I made for the month of January and will be bringing to my in-person group that I meet with at the church every first Friday of the month. And I will also be chatting about 2.5 hat and cowl sets for donating. Also some tips about making them. Next week will be about a yarn swap with Diane from My Pink Bathtub Knits. She is from Manitoba and has a channel on YouTube. Diane will be opening a box of yarn from me on January 31st, and I will open yarn from her on February 2nd. Here, I'll show you. Here we go. So, also next Friday will be events of the month for February, where I share a couple of the events that I will be following. I thank you all, subscribers who are popping back. Thank you so very much for tapping on the like, sharing, and for subscribing and commenting. It is such a help. And to anyone new, I hope you enjoy yourselves and consider subscribing so you won't miss the next video on February 2nd. Last week we had a January knitting vote, and many people would like to see my knit project, which I'll put a picture up in the corner, one of these corners, completed as a baby blanket. So thank you so much, everyone, for your advice and suggestions. As a surprise, you have also inspired me in February to try knitting a triangular shawl for my prayer shawl group for February. So thank you all for commenting about that. Now, this month, there's all finished knit items. There's just one that almost was a whip. I only just tied in the ends and finished this last night. It took me some time because I started out with reading the pattern and found that there was a chart, and the chart helped me quite a bit when I was reading the pattern. Because of, I think, the way that I learn, it was much easier for me to use the chart. And this one is called the Mosaic Crochet Hat by Michelle from MJ's Off the Hook Designs. There's a free version on her blog or a paid version available on Ravelry. The Ravelry one is called the Modish Mosaic Hat. As a modification for this, I used a 4.5 millimeter hook for the entire hat rather than using a larger hook for the body of the hat. The yarn I used was the Bernat Super Value in color burgundy, and the contrast color was Ice Yarns Talera color 74441. Now, a tip that helps me when I'm making hats that are in the round, often what I will do is I will put a stitch marker on the first stitch of the round and also on the last stitch of the round so that it helps me not to add in stitches or drop stitches as I go along. And every few rounds, I will also just take a quick moment and count the number of stitches so that I know that I'm consistent and have not unexpectedly added or dropped stitches. So this is, I really like the pattern, and one of the things that I wanted to try this year was a blanket done in mosaic, and this is a really nice thing that I got the chance to make a hat, so it gave me some practice at doing mosaic. I don't have a scarf to go with this yet, so this is my my half done project to donate. And I do have some of the burgundy, an extra yarn ball of the burgundy, and a little bit of the contrast color left. So I'll be able to trim the scarf with a bit of the contrast color. For the Tropical Birds Crochet Along, this is by Judy's Creations in Crochet. And I chose this month to do a butterfly stitch shawl. I'll show this as close up. You can see that each of these little butterflies, there we go, it's in the pattern. This is by N.J. Sharon and Debbie Adams. It's a free download on Ravelry. To make this one, I actually followed a 2-part YouTube tutorial by Fiber Spider in addition to following the written pattern. I used Brava Sport, a Knit Picks yarn in the color Alfalfa, which is this one. And I also used Cascade yarn Cherub Aran in the color Spring, and that was number 522. There was a slight variation in the thicknesses of the yarn, but I found that using a 4.55 millimeter hook, it seemed to be okay, and I was able to work these two quite well together. Out of a 100-gram ball, this is what I had left of the Brava Sport. And I did use pretty much all of one of the Cascade yarns. I really like this pattern, and I'm sure this one I will be I will be giving to the church for a prayer shawl. I would love to make another of these. It was interesting to make and such a beautiful one. I'm quite sure that I will be keeping this as a pattern that I do again. Now, the 2 hats and cowl sets that I made, both of these I used the same type of yarn. It was yarn that I bought by the ounce from Cambridge Fibers Limited. The first set is a Maya Cowl and Beanie set by Tasha Margette from Stardust Gold Crochet. It's free on the blog, or a paid version is on Ravelry. This is called a beanie in her pattern. I think it looks quite a lot like a beret as well. The pattern is with a cowl as well. I'll hold close to see the stitch pattern. The stitch pattern is similar in both pieces. There's a tutorial on YouTube by Stardust Gold Crochet for this pattern. And for the cowl, I used a 5.5mm hook. And for the hat, I used a 5mm hook. Now, a tip about the beanie, I finished it by adding an extra row of single crochets to hold the hat close to the head and to avoid stretching over time of the bottom of the beret. So that's one of the tips for today. And I thought both of these were quite pretty. I think I did a size medium in this one. And the last set that I made for donation, this one is the Roninga hat by Anna Erlinson from Yarbo Ravelry store. It's a free download on Ravelry. I modified this pattern for the brim. I doubled it so it would be extra warm. So it called for a certain number of stitches in the brim. I did twice that number of stitches. And then when I doubled it, I joined both layers with the first row of the cap. I made a size medium and found as I was working it that it was quite slouchy, so I frogged it and started decreasing after round 6 rather than the higher, taller hat, so that it would be a more fitted cap. For the brim, I used a 5.5mm hook, and for the cap, a 5mm hook. And I'll hold it closer to see the texture in this cap. I think this will be quite warm for the ears, and the stitches are close, so I think it will overall be a nice warm hat. Another tip that will apply for the cowl that I made to match. This cowl, I won't be giving away anything about the pattern, but I would like to share a tip. When a pattern calls for chaining rows to be joined without twisting, sometimes I will crochet the next row of the pattern as if it were a flat piece, and then I will join. So that makes it easier to make sure it doesn't twist. And then when I'm finished the entire pattern, I will stitch that little spot at the bottom closed when weaving in the ends. So that's a tip that might help. Now for this pattern, this is the Spring Iris Cowl by Pam Carr from Carroway Crochet. It's free on the blog or a paid version on Ravelry. I used a 5.5mm hook for the cowl, and again, most of the yarn here was the remainder of that by the ounce yarn that I had purchased from Cambridge Fibers Limited. I used all that was left, and I also added in, so that there was extra height to the cowl, I also added in a bit of contrast, Red Heart with Love, in the color of Eggshell. And that was some scrap yarn that I still had from a previous project. So those were my projects for this week. I thank you all for joining me, and have a wonderful weekend. Enjoy your crochet, enjoy your knitting, and I hope to see you next Friday.